Before we get into the underground proper, allow me to read a list of the things I either forgot to talk about, or thought of to talk about between the last segment and this one. First of which being enemy aggravation ranges. Now, in gaming, an enemy aggravation range is the range at which an enemy can see you and be aggravated by your presence enough to try to attack and kill you. And you see, us boys, when we play these games, we call these things the enemy aggro ranges. And in this game, in Resident Evil 9 Requiem, that's the game we're talking about, don't forget it! In this game, enemy aggro ranges are quite easily exploitable if you know how. Like, if you go into another room, it's entirely possible that an enemy will just stop following you, which is very funny when you see it in actual gameplay. It can be a little tricky to use these to your advantage, but when you know that they're there, it's pretty easy to exploit them, especially when you know that the main hall, enemies just can't go in there at all. But anyway, point 2 is that enemies ragdoll when they die, which has nothing to do with gameplay, but it is funny, and I haha at that quite often. Point 3 is another movie reference, specifically to the film Aliens, where Ripley has to save a little blonde girl from a big monster with the hind legs that go in a weird direction, you know, like, not like Yoshi, but Yoshi has the forward legs, where like the knee bends in a regular way, but the monster has the backward legs where it bends in the backward way. You know, like how animals do. And the thing is, the same thing happens in the game as in the movie. You're a lady who is trying to save a little blonde girl from a big monster with those weird hind legs. So it's like, instead of wearing your influences on your sleeve, you're just showing them proudly, brazenly even. And yeah, it's just Aliens 2, that's what it is. Or rather, Alien 2, also known as Aliens. The chef zombie looks a lot like this character from the Outlast games called Chris Walker. So you have a horror game ripping off another horror game like 12 years after it came out. So thanks, Resident Evil. You used to be the series that created horror tropes that other people would copy, but now you're copying everyone else. What does that say about where the series is now? The main area of the clinic is meant to feel like Resident Evil 1, the mansion from Resident Evil 1. Probably the remake more than the original mansion even, because in the remake there's this door at the back of the main hall that's kind of hidden a little bit, but it goes outside, and then in Resident Evil 9, there's this door in the main hall that goes outside that's at the back of the main hall. See how much I can repeat myself, but you know what I mean. It's supposed to be like the mansion from Resident Evil 1, but it does not feel like the mansion at all, because it's just not nearly as well put together. Whenever Grace sees the blister heads for the first time, she will always be shocked by it. This occurs even after she finds the document explaining what the blister heads are, which I would think would take away from the surprise of what they are a little bit. But no, she's just surprised the same way no matter what. Which I guess, why would they create two different ways that she can be surprised? But man, games used to account for this sort of stuff. Games used to, but they don't anymore. So thanks, modern gaming, for making it more complex but less good. The last thing is something I'd like to reiterate just in case I didn't get it across before, but the hemolytic injector, no matter what, if it's a living zombie or a dead zombie, as long as it's on the floor, it will always show you the prompt to use the hemolytic injector. Even if the zombie is fully dead and the game knows that it is fully dead, you can still use the hemolytic injector on it just to waste it. Which becomes a much bigger issue in this part of the game because there are a lot more zombies just lying on the floor, pretending to be dead, but most of them just don't wake up until much later on in this chapter of the game. So thanks, hemolytic injector, for making me waste my supply. Now with that out of the way, we can finally get to the land down under. AKA the underground of the clinic. And we start with Grace hitting the bottom of the hole that she jumped down, which the bottom of the hole looks nothing like it did when you looked at it before, but that's probably because she, like, I don't know, off-screen jumped down multiple different holes or whatever. I don't know. They don't explain this stuff. If I were to make the game, I would make the bottom of the hole look the same as when you peered into it from the top of the hole, but that's not what they did, so whatever. Anyway, she gets up, and then that's the end of that cutscene, because that had to be a cutscene. Couldn't just be gameplay. But anyway, we go down this tunnel, and what's that? That's an electrical box without any electrical... It takes an electrical plug, but there is no electrical plug inside of it. So, oh no, we can't do the electrical box thing, and this door is closed to us because the doors close when there is no power to power the doors, but they open when there is power to power the doors. They just automatically open, which I would think, if this is supposed to be a prison area, which it is supposed to be a prison area given these holding cells over here. I would think that if the doors open automatically, that would be a horrible, terrible, no good thing that you would not want to happen in your prison area, which for some reason you just have in this basement of a hospital. Who knows why? Anyway, while you're walking through the corridor, Grace says, and I quote this directly, "Why is this under the hospital?" "Grace, I'm going to strangle you if you don't stop telling me what to think." "I will strangle your neck even." All the way over here, there is an elevator that you cannot use, but it is very clearly supposed to be like where you go at the end of the segment. So that's the main goal for, like, after we get the little girl back, is to get to the elevator and escape. But first we go through this corridor, and we find a new save room. Yay, we can save and do our items and all that, and it's nice. It's nice to have. And we can see Emily on these cameras that are over here in this security room, but we can't get to her because it's over there. So we just gotta get out of there and get over there. As you're going through this segment, you might notice that your flashlight cannot actually reach the end of any of these halls. So the flashlight it makes the game a little more claustrophobic than it should be because it doesn't light up the area that well. But anyway, there's zombies lying on the floor all over. There's a zombie over here banging on this door. I wonder if he'll eventually get through the door. He will do that eventually. But if you kill him before that happens, then you might miss out on the items in there, and they're pretty good items. But anyway, you go over here, and you go over here, and there's another cutscene. Yay, more cutscenes where you see Emily in there. And Marie was in the cell, but Marie leaves the cell. And Grace goes up to the door, and she shakes on it very, very loudly, which you think she would not want to do, you know, to not alert any of the monsters around her, but she shakes it very loudly to, I guess, get Emily's attention, which, if I were in her position, I would first try whispering, and if that didn't work, I would just go away and see how to get her out of there, not shake on the bars. But thanks, Grace, for your big, massive, huge brain that you have between your eyes that I will poke out with a stick. But anyway, Emily's sleeping, so she can't talk to us right now. And there are a lot of dolls in there because Marie likes dolls, don't you know? And I guess at this point you could, like, infer that she just collected Emily because she likes dolls, but if you actually know the lore and have been reading the documents, then you know that Marie was a little girl too. Or even if you just have half a brain, you know you know that Marie was a little girl too, and that's why she captured Emily, because they were friends at some point. But anyway, there's dolls in there because she collects dolls, and Grace, in her infinite wisdom, says it collects things. What things, Grace? What does she collect? You could use your words a little more. You could say what those dolls are. You could say it collects dolls. But no, she just says it collects things in general. She does not collect things in general, you simpleton. She collects dolls, you foolish woman. She is not foolish because she is a woman, okay? She is a fool, and she is a woman. Those two things are completely separate from each other. But anyway, she sees that the cell needs power to open, because that's how these doors work. So you go over here and you find this thing that has 3 empty slots. Or I think it has 2, and then it has 1 power cell for you to take. But above the power cell, you find this document and this map that just tells you where the other 2 power cells are. And I mean, it pinpoints them on the map for you because you're too stupid to figure out where they are for yourself. Like really, back in the day in Resident Evil 1, at least the remake and the original, it would tell you where something is in a document, and then you would actually have to find where that thing is in the 3D space that you're trying to occupy. Like it gives you a hint, sure, but it wouldn't tell you everything. Because part of the fun of the game is exploring and finding things on your own. But no, here they just tell you exactly where to go, because surely the massive audience out there that we have of millions of people are too stupid to understand where all of these spark plug things are, these, or whatever they are. I'll call them spark plugs. They're too stupid to understand where those spark plugs are, so let's just jot them on the map for them. No, I am against that, and I will not be voting for you in the next election, Resident Evil. But now that we have that spark plug, oh no, Emily, or rather Marie, appears at the end of the corridor, and it's like, oh no, I should hide in this open cell, which is open to us right now. But the thing is, you actually can run fast enough to avoid her here, and if you put the spark plug in any of these junction boxes, I'll call them, then the lights come on, and whenever the lights are on, then Marie is like, oh no, I hate the light, and she goes away. So you could just hide in here for an undetermined amount of time, or you could run with everything you have and then put a spark plug in there, and then Marie's gone, the threat is gone, and you're already on your way to the next objective anyway. So you might as well just put the spark plug in there and run forward, but there are other things to get first. So let's just assume that this is our first playthrough, and we haven't thought that through yet. So we're hiding in here until we're just sick of hiding, because you can't really see that well, because it's dark. So you don't know where Marie is, so you're just going off of sound. So you hide in here, and then it's like, oh, I'm tired of waiting because that's boring and silly and stupid. So you come back out, and it's like, oh, she's gone. So then you see this, and it's like, I'll go in there because I have that spark plug thing. And you go in there, and there's a little Mr. Raccoon thing. And next to the Mr. Raccoon, you can find a note saying that there is a toolbox in the boiler room over here that you can find that will allow you to open up this grate over here, which is not opened at this point, but it can be if you find that tool. But also, if you find the tool, then you can open up this junction box, or whatever it is. this electric box. I'll call it a junction box, but whatever you call it, you can get the tool over there and open the junction box over here. So as we're over here, we're like, oh, I'll go over there eventually, but oh look, I found this thing, so I'll do that next. So you go into here, there's a couple of zombies, I suppose, here and there to shoot. And you go over here and you find this little room, and in this room there is a safe that you can open. If you remember, Leon found a combination in the attic, which tells us the combination to this safe that we can now open as Grace, a person who did not find that combination at all. Leon found the combination, you silly little lady. You do not know the combination, and yet you can open up this safe. I find that a little silly, that Leon finds the combination and then she's able to open it, but whatever. There's another thing that is much more distraught-making over here that you can find. It is called a raccoon roundup map. And what it is it shows you where all of the little raccoon rascal guys are all over the map for the entire clinic, for every level of the clinic. So if you just wanted to like find those guys on your own, well, who cares about that? We'll give you the exact location of where every single one of them is because you're too stupid to figure it out, you silly little gamer. Like really, what's the point of this? The point of the raccoons is that you are supposed to find them hidden in all these different places all around the map. And most of them, by the way, are pretty much just right in front of you because you can hear them and they're rattling around so you can hear them. And most of them you can just see very easily because they're on the main path of the game. There's only like a couple that I didn't find on my first playthrough, and 2 of them are because they're well outside of the bounds of the play area, so you wouldn't even be looking for them in those places anyway. But here you're just given a map that tells you where exactly each one is, so it just defeats the purpose of hiding these things and having the player try to find them through their observation skills. So I guess they didn't really trust your observation that much. I said that weird. But they didn't trust your observation that much already to this point, so I guess they wouldn't trust it more here with their little raccoon minigame. And by the way, these little things that you can find around the map, there have been other things like this in other Resident Evil games, but they don't give you a map of where they are. They don't do that, ever. This is the first time this has happened, and yet this is like one of the most popular Resident Evil games for some reason. I don't get it. I guess just a lot of the general audience has played this one and not hardcore Resident Evil fans, because I can't imagine a hardcore Resident Evil fan being happy with either this part of the game or with Leon's part of the game, because they're just so thin. But anyway, the rant over, no more rant. Don't worry, there's no more rants, except for later. Ho ho ho. You can crawl in this vent if you want to, and you can find a little, there's a lockpick kit right there. And then you can go over here and, oh no, Marie makes some noises because she's killing some zombie over here, even though when we were there earlier, there were clearly no zombies in there. But whatever, she's off on her own adventures, Marie is. And if you go over here right now, then the grate will be open, because I guess she threw this body in there, so the grate had to be open. But yeah, you don't need to get the tool to open this door, unless you just don't witness this scene until you get here. So if you wanted to, you could have skipped finding this area earlier, and you could have just gone straight here, and then make a big loop all around here. And there is a spark plug over here, by the way, so grab that, nab it. Nab it up. When you do grab the plug, Marie appears and a couple of zombies wake up, but if you just put the plug right back in, then Marie is like, oh no, the light, I'm gonna disappear again, go back into the vents. So you just have to deal with the zombies and not Marie. Also, you can use the Requiem if you want to stun Marie, but as she is invincible, that is a horribly stupid, bad idea, so don't do that. Now that we have these plugs, we're gonna go over to this hallway and light it up at this section. However, if we do that, then all the water in this room, because there's a couple of pools of water, those become electrified and we can't go in there. Oh no, we can't get the tool that's over here. How horrible. However, we can go in this room and fight a couple of zombies and get a new recipe for our crafting, which is to craft a Molotov with our bottles. So if you haven't used your bottles to this point, this is how you should use them probably, because these can actually deal damage to enemies and bosses and what have you. However, as we'll see, Grace does not have that many actual boss fights, so you can pretty much just use Molotovs on enemies if you want to. But anyway, we take the plug back out, then we go all the way over here, put it in there, move a little crate over, and then we can get in here and get somewhere in here we can find another lockpick in order to lockpick a thing that you can lockpick, also known as a lock. But anyway, we can go over here, we can find the tool to open up the thing over there, and then, oh no, Marie appears because she's biting the head off a zombie again. That's just how she does. But yeah, you can, as you see, you're given another room where you can just make a big circle around a big enemy in order to evade them. They just love their big circles now, don't they? So anyway, you go through here, you go back, you get the plug, because you need 2 of them for this box over here, and eventually you need all 3 of them. But you go over here, you use your tool, and oh no, a zombie wakes up, but you can just shoot him, so it's fine. But you use the 2 plugs, and then this door opens over here, and then you can go in there, and oh no, the grates in the ground fall. Ah, scary. But the thing is, I tested it, and as far as I know, you cannot fall in this pit that these grates create when they fall. So it's literally just there to scare you. But you can go into this ventilation shaft over here and go around the pit that way, which, if you have to take multiple trips through here, you have to go around that every single time, which is not fun. But anyway, we climb up this ladder, we go over here, there's the 3rd spark plug, but if we take it, then that door closes, so we can't take it, so it's terrible, and everything's awful, and life stinks. However, we do find this key over here that goes to forklifts, and there are 2 forklifts. There's this forklift, and there's that forklift. What is odd about these forklifts is that they are completely stationary, and by that I mean they are literally, like, built into the ground. So the forklift can only really lift something and then set it down and do nothing else. Which completely defeats the purpose of a forklift. A forklift is supposed to lift something and then move it somewhere else. Preferably something that weighs like hundreds, if not thousands of pounds, because things get heavy, okay? But forklifts are meant to move things, not just stay in one position forever. But these stupid nonsense forklifts, they pretty much just act as things that allow you to move into a door over here and over there. So I don't see why this couldn't have just been a key. This could have just been a key that unlocks 2 doors, because there are literally just 2 forklifts in the entire game. So what were they thinking? That's what I'm saying. What were they thinking? They were thinking stupidly, and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But hatred aside, we go in here and we can find an inventory upgrade and the map for the entire area. Yay! Inventory upgrade. You know what that means? That means that Grace now has an entire 14 inventory slots, which is a lot. At this point in the game, you might even struggle to fill all of these slots with anything useful, because most of it will just be taken up by ammo that you will not run out of, or by bottles, which you also won't run out of, because there is not enough time left in the rest of the game for you to run out of all the supplies that you have, probably. Because that's how many supplies you have at this point. In some of my previous playthroughs, I have left the hospital part of the game with like over 50 to 100 ammo, so you can carry a lot of ammo with you at this point. Like at this point you could have as much as 120 ammo, which you will never use because, as we'll see shortly, Grace does not have that many boss fights in her campaign, and when she does have a boss fight, it does not use that much ammo. So now we're supposed to go all the way back up here and use the forklift key, but first, we go back over here and we go through these vents, which, by the way, whenever you enter these vents, you have to crawl in with this like little cutscene that they show you, and I count it as a cutscene if the game just takes the gameplay away from you and plays an animation. If it plays an animation, then that is unskippable. I call that a cutscene. Even if it doesn't look like a cutscene, I call it a cutscene. So that's my terminology, so get used to it, Buster. But anyway, we go through these vents and, oh no, there's a jump scare with Marie at this part. But she cannot actually harm you at all, so you're just safe. You're just going through the motions of this crazy roller coaster in this horror theme park we're in. But we go back through here, we take all the spark plugs with us because we need them to get over here. So we use the plug on this door, we go over here, we go around all these things and use the key on the forklift, and it lifts all stationarily, because that's all it can do is lift in one little position, which is, yeah. But you use the plug in this little electric box, and now you can enter here, finally! And this overhead conveyor, which runs throughout the room, starts running. Now, what does this overhead conveyor have on it that runs through the room, like through over here and then through there? It has bodies. It is running literally like countless bodies, hundreds of bodies on this overhead conveyor. And I'm just like, why? How? How is it possible that this hospital even, hospitable more like, hospitable, I hospitable the fool who came up with this concept. But this hospital kidnapped or just took in like hundreds of patients, and enough patients to fill 2 overhead conveyors with bodies of zombies, and if you touch them, they're like, ah, boo, I'm a zombie, and they can't hurt you really. But anyway, besides that, there's countless bodies up here, and they've never been investigated, and I hate you forever. This is silly, this is stupid. This story is... how? This story cannot happen with any sense of real reality in real life. It is so fictitiously fake. It is silly. This could never happen in real life, where just hundreds of patients go missing, and then they fill an overhead conveyor with the patients' bodies in order to push them into this big pool, which we will see the purpose of in a minute. But man, I can't get past how stupid and silly this is. But I guess I have to if I want to talk about the rest of the game, which we have not gotten to the most silly part of the game. The most silly and stupid part is in like the last 30% of the game. We have to at least get there. and I'm going to get through all of it, but right now, I just have to get through this. I have to get through this. I have to find it within myself. I have to find the inner power and inner peace to get through this. Yes. Oh yeah, whenever these zombies on the conveyor grab you because you get too close, they say their little thing, the conveyor just stops while they're grabbing you. And then once they stop grabbing you, the conveyor moves on in its direction. I don't know why. I guess the conveyor was being respectful to the zombie and stopping when he needed to do something. But I'm just like, man, that's so lazy. You wanted this creepy animation to play out, and the only way you thought of to do it was to stop the conveyor just altogether. You didn't think, well, what if we keep the conveyor moving? Could we do that? No, that's too much effort. That's too hard. Let's not do that. Let's be lazy and just have it stop altogether. But anyway, we're supposed to find a gap in all these bodies and move through this zone. And oh no, a zombie comes off the conveyor and we shoot it to death like we did with all the other zombies. And then you move this, and then you make the conveyor go the other direction because you have to in order to go this way. And then you come here and oh no, another zombie that we can just shoot to death or flame to death or whatever have you. And then we go through this, for some reason, really long set of stairs. That's what it's called. It's called a set of stairs, Joshua. But we go through this long set of stairs, and then the bodies are all being dumped in this big pool of water for some reason. And there's a save point because I guess they think that this part would be difficult, but the game auto-saves anyway, so I guess this is really just here for the harder modes where it doesn't save automatically. Or rather, it does save automatically, just not nearly as often. But let's just get past it. There's a thing you pull here, and then the pool drains. And then it's like, oh, well, I can just go across here, right? I can just go down into the pool section, and there's bodies on the ground of this pool. And then you go over here, and oh no, the ladder retracts into the upward. I was gonna say into the ceiling, but it's not. It's just upward. It retracts. And then there's this voice that comes on and is like, well, this processing area has to process these bodies before you can move on, which I think is just very highly dangerous, that a worker could just get caught down here and then be part of the processing of these bodies. But as you will see, the processing is very aggressive. Because over here on this wall, there is a massive body grinder that pretty much just grinds bodies into blood and meat and blood. And what happens is there's this conveyor on the ground that constantly pushes you forward very, very slowly. And the zombies get up, and you have to either fight them or shove them into the big body grinder, the big body meat grinder over here, so that they don't kill you and whatever. It's an arena, you could say. They wanted an excuse to put an arena over here, but the thing is, in the story, it makes zero sense. There are all these bodies just being dumped here, so that they can be ground up into blood, which is collected in this pool over here, this massive pool of blood. Yeah, just throw the bodies over into just throw the bodies into the body grinder to collect their blood. Yeah, that's the best way to collect blood. Yeah. All of this is literally just to collect body blood, which, if they wanted to just collect body blood, there are other ways to do that. One way that I could think of immediately, right now at least, is there are like thousands of pounds of blood in blood drives that just goes unused because I guess you just can't use all of it because so many people donate blood. So what if they just collected all of the spare blood from blood drives and used that blood and not all of this weirdo zombie blood? I guess they want to have zombie blood because they want to use infected blood all over, but this is just one of the dumbest ways I could have thought of that you could do this. And I probably would have not ever thought of this, because this is insane. This is insanity. Why would you think of this? What type of person are you, Resident Evil creative team B, the B team, who makes the worst games? But why? Why did you think of any of this? Why is this the way that you collect infected blood? This makes no sense. As we'll see later on, they really like to retcon a lot of stuff from other Resident Evil games, so why couldn't they have retconned it so that all of the other bioterrorism acts that they've done in the past was just to collect blood for whatever they're doing here? Then you could like link the games together, even though it's still nonsense, but it's less nonsense than this nonsense, this stupid nonsense. But anyway, despite there still being zombie bodies on the floor, and possibly even following you, trying to bite and kill you, the voice overhead says, "Oh, the processing is over now," just after an arbitrary amount of time. And then the ladder comes down and you're able to go up there, get the other spark plug, and would you look at that, we can go back this way now. But oh no, those bodies are blocking this way, so we can't go that way. But there was a fan over here, and the fan has stopped, so we can go this way down this slide, because we're in an amusement park. Whee! And it doesn't actually loop like that in the game, but I thought that would be fun. So you go through the blood slide, because that's what it is, it's a blood slide. And you wind up in the collection pool, and Grace is like, "Oh no, the blood got in my mouth." And this blood should absolutely be drenching Grace head to toe at this point. She should look absolutely horrible, but this game does not want its protagonists to look horrible. It wants them to look like action movie stars. So when she gets out of the blood pool, she just looks fine. She might be a little wet from the liquid, because blood is a liquid, but she has like no red on her at all, which is you're ruining my immersion game by not making this realistic. But anyway, you can get out of the pool, and there's a lever over there that you can pull, and then the pool drains and you can get some blood stuff in there, which is a nice little reward for your gauntlet that you just threw down. But when you're done collecting, you can go in this elevator up here and then go back over here and try to collect the spark plugs. But oh no, the lights burst, and Marie is gonna come after you. So you get this plug, and if you wanted to, you could go over there this way, but if you do that, then Marie appears at this exact part, or at least this approximate part, because maybe it's like off by 1 pixel or 2. But Marie appears over there, so if you want to do this the smart way, you take the plug, you plug it in there, and then you go in through this way, the slow way, and then she pops up there, and then she walks over there slightly, and you take the plug and you run back over there. And now that you have all 3 plugs, you run over here. Oh yeah, at some point, this zombie broke down this door, and then you can get some valuable goodies in there, including an empty injector, which is very, very good for your health. But anyway, we go over here with all our 3 plugs, and we plug them in, and there's a little cutscene, because of course there is. Basically, just all the power comes on, all the doors open, and there's these zombies coming out now. Ooh, spooky. And Grace finally grabs Emily and carries her out of there. And now we're given gameplay again. And we can't shoot anything because we're carrying the little girl in our arms. So thanks for warning me, game, that I wouldn't be able to shoot anything. But now we're in an action segment. And because we're in an action segment, we're pretty much just supposed to run away all the way to the elevator. But if you wait just a couple of seconds because maybe you're stunned and you were expecting more of a cutscene and less gameplay, let's say you stay here for a couple of seconds, then these zombies at the end of the corridor pretty much move forward at a rate that makes it impossible for you to run past them without getting hit. So anyways, I just thought that was funny. I thought it was a little funny. But anyway, you run over here, you go through here. There are zombies trying to wake up, but if you run, you just won't face them. And you might think, oh, there's a save room here, I should save. No. What do you mean, no? I should save. It's a save room. I should save. No. The game says no, you cannot save. Because it's an action segment, you know? I don't know why this door closes. In the story, at least. But in gameplay, it's an action segment, so they don't want you to just go in here, save, and think you're safe for a while. They want you to run past the save room. I just think that's funny. That they just didn't think of it. They didn't think of that save room being in that place during your action segment, and the player thinking, oh, I should go in there. Or rather, they did think of it, but in the wrong way, being that they should restrict the player into not being able to save. But anyway, you go through here, there's some zombies that go boo, and then you go into the elevator, and oh no, there's a big obvious piece of plywood there, or I guess a 2x4, whatever it's called. So you set down the little Emily girl, you move the thing, and the elevator finally moves, just right as Marie comes up to the elevator door and gives you a big boo. Ah! It's not very spooky to me, because I can see the little tricks that you're doing to try to make it more scarier. To try to make it more scary than it actually is. Meanwhile, in other Resident Evil games, you've made it scary without having to be so obvious about it. You know what I mean? But anyway, you're taking the elevator now, and we're in more cutscene territory. I should mention that in order to get the pallet out of the elevator door, and in order to get the door to close, you have to hold a button. You just have to hold a little button. And you know how much I love holding buttons. I love it so much! So after you move the pallet, even if you haven't pushed the elevator button yet to make it go up, it goes up anyway. And you think you're safe for a while, but oh no, near the top, Marie starts climbing around the elevator and is like, aha, I'm here, I'm gonna break through the ceiling. But then the elevator reaches the top and it kind of stops halfway, and you have to pry open the doors, and guess what you have to do to pry open the doors? You hold a button. So once you're done holding that button, cause boy isn't that gameplay, you're able to move out of the elevator, but not on your own, of course, in a cutscene, because we like our cutscenes around here, don't we? And as you're getting out of the elevator, Marie grabs you by the leg, and the elevator snaps, thus cutting off something. It doesn't show you what it cuts off, but it heavily implies that Grace's leg is cut off by the elevator, which would be interesting. That would be very, very interesting to change up the gameplay like that so drastically. But no, this game does not want to do anything interesting at all, because as the camera pans down, you see that Grace's leg is just fine. When the elevator snapped, it actually cut off the monster's hand, the Marie's hand. The Marie, of course, because there's only one of them, don't you know, in the entire planet of the world. But yeah, for some reason it just fakes you out right there into thinking that something drastically more interesting happened, but this game wants to be very boring and not do anything interesting, so instead it does the lame thing and fakes you out with the leg possibly being off, but oh no, then it's not, and oh, I'm so relieved. Yay! But I'm not relieved as the consumer. I am just concerned more about where this series is going in the future. What's Resident Evil 10 gonna look like if this is what 9 looks like? Man. But anyway, Emily gives Grace the little cube of quartz that she needs to get out of the back door of the hospital, and Emily gives Grace a little hug, and this is supposed to be all emotional, but the game has not put in the work to get me to care for the characters, so I don't care about this hug at all. But anyway, we're now here at this part of the main hall, which was previously only accessible by Leon. And if we go over here, this door is closed. So it's still only accessible by Leon, but we get this little bitty hallway segment. So isn't that nice of the developers of this game? But we're walking over here and Grace says, "Hey, Emily, you want to leave with me?" And Emily's just like, "Okay." That's pretty much how she says it. She's not like, "Oh, joy, I get to be out in the real world and not in my little bitty prison cell for the rest of my life. Yay, thank you, Grace, for helping me so much." No, she's just like, "Okay, I'll come with you." Come on, give it some emotion, girl, please. If you want to, you can go over here and leave Emily on the couch for a bit, just in case there's anything that you have yet to pick up in the hospital. Maybe there's a puzzle you left unsolved. You can solve it now. Maybe you left that monster hand over there, but you can pick it up now. For some reason, you can pick up the monster hand. I know the reason. You might not know the reason. I'm gonna tell you the reason, but I'm not telling it to you now. Wait until part 8. Ha 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 ha. But anyway, you can put the last little quartz over in this door once you have all 3 quartzes. And you can open the door, but you cannot leave without Emily. You have literally no choice in the matter, because that's, I guess, where the story's going. So you go back and get Emily, and you go over to the door, and we're finally done with the inside of the care clinic. There's still the outside to be taken care of, which will be the next segment. However, I think that's where we can end it for today. This took a while to get out because I was very, let's say, busy at work, but they fired me, so yeah, I can do this now. At least for a while, at least for a little while. But yeah, all of the notes for this were done months ago. I was just strained mentally, so yeah, that's how it was. The next video will hopefully come out a lot sooner and be possibly even shorter than this one, who knows? Because the next segment isn't that long, but then again, there is Leon gameplay and Grace gameplay to be had. But as we've seen, it is not that complex. If you want to, there's the Patreon in the description, and which would actually be more helpful right now because of the job situation. But whatever, I have some money saved up. You don't feel like it's a guilt trip. I'm not trying to guilt trip you. I'm just saying that the option is there if you really like my stuff and you really, really want to see more. Like, there's this thing grasping at your heart inside of you, telling you, I must give money to this person. But no, you don't have to if you don't want to. I've thought about doing this with other games, like maybe Metroid Prime 4, because that game is also a stinker, so who knows, maybe I'll do that at some point. I'm playing through Resident Evil Code Veronica X. That game is a mixture of fun and just disastrous mechanics that don't work and storytelling that is awful. But at least it's more fun than this game. It has a lot more player choice, and you can mess up a lot more, as I have seen in my playthrough. I'm like halfway through, but it's fun. It's fun enough. Probably not gonna play it again, but it's fun enough. Anyway, I've also thought of doing kind of this, but just for the stories of games. Like, what if I just told you what happens in the God of War series? Because a lot of people don't remember the story. They get through the gameplay, and there's so much gameplay that I guess the story just slips out of their brain hole. So I've thought about doing that. And who knows, maybe even books at some point in the future. But all of that would require more time. I'm gonna go play Resident Evil Remake on the the GOG version, because that's the version that I have on computer, and right now I can just record on computer. And I'm not buying a capture card right now. Definitely not buying that right now. Those are like $200 or whatever, but right now that's an impossibility. But anyway, I'm gonna probably eat a Pringle, maybe. Maybe eat a Pringle. Maybe I won't, maybe I will. You'll see in a few seconds. Ha ha ha. I'll take a potato crisp and eat it.